A smaller type of themed experience that often gets overlooked are shooting arcades, which, if you're not familiar with them, allow participants to pick up a faux rifle and aim at targets in the scene. Today, these attractions usually achieve their gameplay through infrared sensors, which, when the rifle connects with a target, causes a mechanical effect to trigger. For example, the Shootout exposition at Disneyland's Frontierland has you aiming into a western scene, where effects include a skeleton popping out of a grave when you hit the moving shovel, or an owl that begins to hoot as its eyes light up. This type of themed experience can lead to a lot of fun discovery, as successfully hitting your targets results in effects that reveal themselves as a form of satisfying feedback. It wasn't always this way, as while there isn't a lot of information available about where they originated, shooting arcades are an older kind of attraction that used to actually use real air rifles that would fire pellets at the targets. The maintenance cost was a considerable factor, as the paint would need to be reapplied every night, or at least it was if you were in a nice place like Disneyland. Did you know that at one point, the park had an Adventureland version called the Big Game Safari Shooting Gallery? Still, it's clear why these were phased out for infrared, as the cost was cheaper and you could do a lot more with interactive effects. But these in turn have become rare, I think because the attraction evolved into interactive dark rides. Some of the earliest examples are Buzz Lightyear's Space Ranger Spin, which premiered in 1998 at the Magic Kingdom, which was then followed in 2000 by Universal's Men in Black Alien Attack, which for me is the best example of this genre of ride. However, this type of attraction continued to evolve by going digital, with Toy Story Mania premiering at Hollywood Studios in 2008. It's a very well designed ride, but in my opinion, changed the industry negatively, leading to a slate of poorly conceived rides that, because they are mostly digital, could be produced for cheap. I always enjoy this type of ride when it's built with physical sets, when you can find them, but to get to the point of this video, I wanted to explore the very first one that was built. From my video earlier in the year where I covered Men in Black, I incorrectly made the statement that the first type of ride in this genre was Space Ranger Spin, but I was corrected in the comments by Lewis Wright, leading to this short little video. So today, let's actually take a look at the earliest version of this type of ride, El Paso Special, and see how this strange Western shootout attraction makes for such an interesting but relatively unknown predecessor to the attractions that you know today. This ride appeared, in all places, in Bobbejaanland, a park located in Belgium. Premiering in 1988, El Paso Special was the first indoor attraction added to the park, with its pretzel-style dark ride system manufactured by Mach, and its animatronics coming from Golding Leisure Design. If you watched my video on Pirates of the Caribbean knockoff rides in Europe, you might recall that both of these companies also worked together to produce Pirate Adventure at Drayton Manor and Los Piratas at Belwerde Park. However, unlike both of these, which are obviously highly derivative of Disneyland's Pirate Ride, El Paso Special did something highly original, putting you into the middle of a Mexican shootout that worked with the Western theme of Bobbejaanland. The attraction facade is a straightforward emulation of Mexican colonial architecture, and on stepping into the station under the overhang, riders board a benched vehicle that is equipped with infrared pistols. Moving forward, the ride begins as doors swing open and reveal what I presume is El Paso, where you ride through the town and shoot at targets that trigger the animatronics to move. After traveling through this initial market scene, riders come up on a festival, which includes a band and puppeteers with skeletons. I assume that this is portraying Dia de Muertos, or is, at the very least, inspired by it. After passing by dancers, who will spin if you hit their target, the vehicles move into the Alhambra Hotel, where you witness American characters involved in a series of drunken comedic scenes inside the saloon. Emerging, there's a bank robbery scene on the left, and the architecture becomes distinctly American. It's not clear if this depicts the progression of El Paso through time, or if the beginning scenes take place elsewhere, but the ride does bring Texas into the theme. After moving through the next part of town, which depicts everyday life, including a sheriff, an undertaker, and a man hung for murder, this short segment concludes as you pass by a blacksmith. Riders next move through a short mining scene where dynamite is being used to blast the tunnels, and on exiting, Native Americans pop up from the left as if attacking the vehicle in the cave opening. The ride then travels into the final scene, which briefly illustrates the Battle of the Alamo, and it then moves through an arch and into a tunnel, which doesn't have any interactive targets, but does showcase a Western band to conclude the ride. El Paso Special is relatively short, coming in at a ride time of approximately 2 minutes and 45 seconds, and because you're just blowing through the scenes, there's not a lot of time to take in the detail. However, what makes this interesting is that unlike most other interactive shooting dark rides, which focus mostly on the score and not actually affecting the environment, El Paso Special instead seems to be designed more like a traditional shooting gallery that was adapted into a ride. If the scenes seem random, then I think that was intentional, as the goal was not story, but rather pure interactivity, with riders aiming for the targets to cause the figures to move. In 2013, the ride system was updated to include a score count, but interactivity on this level is actually pretty rare among this genre of ride, so I like how unique this attraction is, both with its Western theme and through how it's literally just a shooting gallery that happens to be on wheels. El Paso Special is an interesting piece of ride history, and not one that I expected to be the first ever interactive shooting dark ride from 1988. Because Disney had been the leader in attraction and theme park design for so long, I had always assumed that Buzz Lightyear Space Ranger Spin was the first attraction of the genre to premiere in 1998, and while it did kick the industry into producing many more of these rides, there are some other attractions to briefly mention in the 10-year span between the two. The next addition to the genre is a weird one, premiering at Buffalo Bill's Hotel and Casino in Primm in 1994. The resort itself was highly inspired by the Las Vegas pivot to family entertainment in the 90s, and along with its aero hypercoaster known as Desperado just out in the middle of the desert, it's an absolutely fascinating place. However, I already briefly covered this resort in my Theme Parks of the 90s video if you want to learn more, but along with Desperado and some other attractions, Buffalo Bill's also featured the Adventure Canyon log flume. The logs themselves were equipped with infrared pistols, and as riders moved out of the building outside, they ascended a lift into a themed rock structure. After a few bends, riders went down the drop and then moved past a graveyard, with a lone figure pointing his pistol towards riders. Moving inside, the pistols in the log could be used to hit targets along a series of western scenes, which people could view from the side or from bridges as the ride moved through the casino. As far as I can determine, the figures on the ride never moved, and it didn't keep a score either, so the pistols were ultimately a superficial form of interaction, as the targets had lights that would activate if hit. Still, it's really interesting how unique this ride was, because other than the earliest days of interactive dark rides, who would ever think to put shooting gallery mechanics into a log flume of all rides? The next iteration of this type of ride then followed with Pistolero Roundup in 1995. Located at Family Kingdom Amusement Park in Myrtle Beach, this pretzel-style dark ride was actually the first shooting attraction developed by Sally Dark Rides, which is still producing this type of attraction up through today. As the vehicle enters the building, riders move through a series of cartoon scenes in a western town, with pretty simple character cutouts that move when you hit the targets. Like El Paso Special, the focus is on interactivity, with every target resulting in a mechanical effect causing something to move in the scene. It seems like a fun little ride, and is also a lesser known part of attraction history. That then brings us to 1998 with Buzz Lightyear Space Ranger Spin, and it's interesting to see that it wasn't a type of ride system that was innovated by Disney. Granted, it was the first of this type of ride to emphasize score over interactivity, but I think that I actually prefer the shooting gallery on wheels of El Paso Special. It's not the most exciting ride out there, but I like its unique theme, and is a lesser known but still significant part of attraction history. So if you found this little video to be interesting, especially if you learned something new like I did, you can show your support by just simply leaving a like. As always, if you haven't yet subscribed and hit the bell notification yet either, you can also do so now to be alerted to new videos as they're released.